Welcome to Between the Reads, where we shine a spotlight on some of the most talented Black authors in the industry to discuss their works of fiction and the inspirations behind them. Each episode will dive into the rich and diverse world of literature, exploring everything from historical fiction to romance and speculative fiction to YA and beyond. Tune in as we celebrate the voices of Black authors and the power of storytelling. Are you ready, Boos and Bros? Then sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Brian G. Buckmire is a senior staff New York City public defender in the Criminal Defense Practice and Homicide Defense Task Force at the Legal Aid Society, representing indigent clients in Brooklyn, New York. He is the anchor for Law and Crime Daily, a nationally syndicated show covering the hottest cases and controversies from courtrooms nationwide. He is also a legal contributor for ABC and has covered events like the deaths of Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd, the trials against Harvey Weinstein and R. Kelly, and many more. In addition, he serves on the board of trustees for Coney Island Prep, a charter school in South Brooklyn. Born in Toronto, of Caribbean heritage, Brian, his wife Victoria, and their son Reed live in New York. Brian, welcome to Between the Reads.
Thank you for having me here.
You're absolutely welcome. So this story, Coming Home Safe, before we talk about what it's about, it came from two seeds, your wife and your brother. Let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah, so if you know me, the running joke is that my mother's Jamaican and I take more after her. So I'm always having these ideas of like, what about this as a job? And what about this as a job? And I started as thinking, like, well, I'm a lawyer. I kind of like interacting with people and the different stories that we can tell. What if I write a book for lawyers? And my wife looked at me and was like, you guys don't need more books. Like, you guys need to stop talking and maybe listen more. What if you wrote a book for children? And so I was like, yeah, that's smart. And originally, this book was just about, it's kind of corny, but whatever, it's cute now, I guess. It was about two bears traveling through the woods and being stopped by a park ranger. And I was just going to tell that to my kids as a story to like know your rights and all this other stuff. But as I learned more, and as I had a conversation with my brother, it grew into the book that you read. After the death of Elijah McClain, my brother called me up because he lives in Toronto and I'm here in New York. And the age difference between my brother and I is 12 years. So as much as we are a brother, there is a bit of a father-son type of relationship there. And so he calls me up and he says, hey, I saw that Elijah McClain case. And we've talked about the killings of unarmed Black men and women and Black and brown people. But that one really hit him. And he said something that rocked me to my core. And he said, how do I not become the next hashtag? I've potty trained my brother. I taught him how to shave. I bought him his first suit when he graduated from high school. I'm his legal guardian if something happens to my mom. So when he's asking me this question, it's not just brother, it's also father. And next thing he said, I was like, I don't know the answer. And he said, Brian, homicide public defender. I've seen you win cases. I see you on TV talking about these cases. The advice in the book about not keeping your wallet in your back pocket and keeping it in your front pocket, that's something I've been telling him since he was 13. And he's like, I know why you tell me that now. It's like, if you don't have the answer, who does? And he didn't ask it in like an accusatory way. He was asking literally, if you don't have this answer, then where do I go? And I just didn't have it. So I decided to interview people and try my best to get as close to the answer as possible.
So now tell us what this book, Coming Home Safe, is all about.
All right. So Come Home Safe it's really two stories, right? And it's exactly that, about coming home safe. I ended up interviewing, because I don't have the answers. I just had a son 6 months ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I went to parents who are within the criminal justice system, and I asked, what's the conversation that you have? I asked also authors who are in this field, and every parent that I spoke to, regardless of their race, what I tried to do is I keep it that your children are of color, whether they're biracial, they're Hispanic, Black, Asian American, whatever. But do you feel as if your race may be something that may be looked upon before your core or your person? And so I started gathering these tips, and I started gathering these little ways that they kind of finagle speaking to their children. And that's how Come Home Safe came about. It's two stories one of my hypothetical son, Reed, which is actually the name of my son, just spelled differently, and the name of my hypothetical daughter, Olive, because my late grandmother's name was Olive Reed. So this is a bit of a dedication to her. And in each one of the story, they navigate their lives, just in everyday things, coming home from school, going to the bodega or the corner store and getting some drinks, and they're accused of a crime. And as they navigate that without their parents there, they're remembering some of the lessons that we tell them and implementing them, but also managing their fears, their stress, their anxiety. And at the end of the story, when I bring it to a climax, so I'll let you read and see what that climax is, there's that conversation with each parent about what happened, our fears as parents, talking to the kids, their fears, hearing them, seeing them, and trying to find a way past this event.
Absolutely. Now, I want to circle back to something that you said about not having the answers. You state in the back of the book that you wrote this book because you don't have answers to that crucial question, how do I come home safe? Let's unpack that just a little bit.
So I learned a lot. Right. I spoke to about 20 or so judges, court officers, former prosecutors, defense attorneys, public defenders. But at the end of the day, what I got from all the parents was the title. I just want my kid to come home safe. I understand the politics. I understand George Floyd. I understand police reform. I understand that this needs to change, but I can't wait for that to change. I need to give my kids the tools to come home safe. But every parent, I think, had only a piece of the puzzle. And what I believe I've done in this book is I've only put together 10 or so pieces. And I'm kind of saying, hey, here's what we 20 people from this system have put together. Join us in adding your piece. And maybe as a community, because I never say that I know everything, but I think if one voice can kind of break through the noise, and I think that greater voices than mine will hopefully join, then we can come together as a community and find a solution. But other people can see that this is a conversation that we're having, and maybe this doesn't affect them directly, but they'll put their piece of the puzzle in and we can all come together to find a solution.
Yeah. And it's powerful that you did that you did so many interviews, but yet it's also frustrating that we can't just say, this is what you need to do to survive an interaction with the police. It always changes. There's just no one answer to it. And what someone might tell you that worked for them may not work for you. Everything is way too dependent on the officer that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And I hate that. I really hate that.
Yeah.
Now, Olive and Reed, who, as you said, are named after your grandmother, are biracial kids.
Yes.
With a black father and a white mother. Why did you choose to make them biracial in the book?
For two reasons. One, my cousin is biracial, and he was one of the first people that I spoke to about this case. And then two, my children are biracial. My wife is a white woman from Wisconsin.
Okay.
And when I talked to my cousin about it, he actually enlightened me about things that I never thought about. And so I don't want to give too much away, but even in the way that Reed speaks with his father, and I would probably say this to my son, I say, hey, you can't do this. Like, you're a black boy. And his response is, but Dad, I'm only half. Why do they only see the part of me that they want to see? And I got to find an answer for him. And I, as a black man, don't have that answer. I got to go to my biracial cousin who's half Portuguese, half Jamaican, and be like, how do I answer this? So even as a black man who I may know a lot of the answers because I'm so ingrained in this, there's aspects that I'm not going to be able to tell my son. And I wanted to convey that. The other aspect of that as well is there's a whole half of his family that needs to learn this. My father-in-law came to visit last week, and he has two grandsons because he has two daughters. One is blonde hair, blue eyes, and the other is biracial. And he's learning that there's going to be different conversations for his two grandsons. And when he saw like kind of the book back here, I have a bunch of them in a box to hand out. He reached for them. He's like, I need this book. Here's a man who was born in the Midwest and bounced around between Illinois and Wisconsin. Had two daughters with a white woman. Never thought that this would be a conversation he would have to have. He's obviously open to the idea, but now it's at his doorstep. And I thought that speaking truth to my situation, but also the aspect of this isn't just a Black conversation. This is all our conversation. Because you never know who your baby's going to be or who your baby's going to love and the world that we are creating today. So we need to make sure all our babies are safe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, their father taught them how to engage with the police and taught them to always operate from a position of power and not fear. And in each of the situations they were in, they walked things through in their heads, which seems like a long process as we're reading it. But for these two teenagers, they're having to reason out how to keep themselves safe in a matter of seconds. They're having to process and remember everything that their parents said and look at the situation they're in and assess what's going on. That's a lot for an adult, much less a teenage child. And yet you show Black children, these two Black children, biracial children, having to do this on a regular basis. Share why you wanted Olive and Reed acting most of the time from a position of power, but you also show them making mistakes.
Well, first, they're children.
Right.
We could teach our kids to cross the street, don't talk to strangers. If they get older and they go to a bar, don't. Like I have a younger sister as well, and she's 22. I say, hey, if you want to go to a bar and have fun, great. And if a man wants to buy you a drink, great. But you walk to that bar, you see him buy the drink, you see the person pour it, and you take it from them. Never let someone walk that drink to you because you don't know what's going to happen to it from that time. But is she going to make the mistake and one day just say, hey, yeah, you can buy me a drink, and I'm going to be furiously pulling out my hair, whether she's safe or not? Yes. So I wanted it to be real. But I also, the talking from a position of power, that's not me. That is Lance Clark, one of the attorneys who I interviewed, who has two children who are biracial, Black and Hispanic. Wow. And that's what he tells his kids. And I'm like, Lance, I need this. I need to put this in. And because for me, the struggle was when the danger gets to a point, especially for a young man who there's often more violence than with young women. Women face their own issues of being inappropriately touched during a search that a male may not have. But when you have a 14-year-old who may look like a 19-year-old, they may be more aggressive with him. I say, but how do I tell my son that I'm raising to be a king, that at some point you might not have to fight back. You might not be able to fight back because that might be your life. And the way he explained it is what I put in the book. He said, I don't tell my child to step down from nothing, but I tell him to negotiate from a position of power. The police have the power in the street. That's not your time to fight. You quiet your mouth, you evaluate what's going on, you call your father, who's your attorney, you see, you watch, you listen. And when you're alive and I can hold you in my arms, then we argue from a place of power. Then we take back what they tried to take from you. And this way he never makes his children feel less, even though he's informing them how to stay safe. And I thought that was a beautiful way of articulating that. And I tried my best to convey his words of wisdom into the book.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And, you know, I also thought that the kids, showing them making mistakes is showing the harshness of how, you know, Black and brown children are expected to conduct themselves as adults in situations where if it was a white child, you know, the officer might just, you know, pat him on the head and be like, oh, you know, well, just next time be careful. But it's always with us. We're always treated as adults, no matter the age. We're always seen as adults.
Yeah,
you know, and
faster. I mean, I have a 6-month-old child, and he, in my mind, he's adorable. He's everything. And as he's growing, I hear my wife and everyone else say, "Oh, he looks so much older. Look at him. He looks like he's growing up." And I'm enjoying that, watching him. But there's a part of my mind that says,
"Scary.
If you look older than you are, is an officer going to treat you like a 12-year-old, or is he going to treat you like an 18-year-old?" And I know I'm sitting down and you can't see it, but I'm 6'4", 220 pounds, and the doctor said he's going to be bigger than you. Wow. So when my kid is 12 or 13, is he going to be 6 feet tall? Could be. I was 6 foot at 14. I know how people looked at me when I was 14. They didn't see a 14-year-old.
They saw a man. They
saw a man. Is he going to be treated like a man even though he's 14, 13? And so even something like that, when they say he looks older, he looks so beautiful, he looks this, there's a fear that he's not going to get treated like a 14-year-old white child who looks older. Because they might say, oh, he's 14, I can tell. But they have trouble with that with us. And that's scary.
Yeah. Yeah, that is. So you named two of the officers after Pauli Murray.
Yeah.
And Claudette Colvin, a famous civil rights lawyer, and a young girl who was arrested for not moving from her seat on the bus before Rosa Parks was arrested, respectively. Yep. What was your thought process behind that?
My mother, absolutely. Let me tell you about growing up at my mother's house. If you didn't know something, you look it up. Jamaican, you got to look it up. So even the chapter titles have quotes from famous Black civil rights, civil rights members. All the characters. Even the officer Bingham, that's the name of a Supreme Court case about trying to separate but equal. I would tell people, when you read this book, every name is there. Every name that's there is intentional. It's either my grandmother, or I have my mother in there as well, or it's someone that you should look up. It's someone that you should think, well, why did Brian put this person? And I hope that like those little kind of nuggets and kind of what do they call them? Easter eggs are something that people can look into. Even Olive's phone case. Viola Desmond, right? I'm Canadian, so we often say that Viola Desmond is the Canadian Rosa Parks, right? So I try to make it a little fun, a little learning. I love the fact that people catch on to that, and I also hope that people look into it and learn a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. That's when I saw that, I was like, Pauli Murray, wait a minute, I have a book on her. Yep. And then Claudette Colvin, I have a book on her too. It's like, wait a minute, what is he doing? And why is he giving these cops these names? But then I'm thinking through, and I'm like, well, if people even remotely, remember those names, they're going to be like, oh, okay, and go look it up. So very nice strategy there.
Thank you.
Enjoyed that. Now, Olive and her mother have a very tough conversation after Olive is accused of taking this white woman's cell phone, which she did not. And Olive points out that she felt like she was just yelling underwater to try and get the cops, the people at the store, to listen to her. But then when her white mother shows up, all of a sudden, the whole situation shifts in her favor.
Yep.
And she's furious about this because she was like, I was saying all of these things and no one's listening to me, and you show up and all of a sudden it's yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Can we talk about that talk that they had a little bit?
Yeah. So like I said, in speaking to parents, I also wanted to speak with white mothers who have children of color and how that conversation goes, how they toe that line. Spoke with my wife. I actually spoke with one of her cousins. I spoke with one of my colleagues who actually represents women who are trafficked. And so in speaking with them, it was interesting as to how they toe the line. It's like, I know I have to have this conversation because you're my daughter, but I also know it's difficult to have because we have different backgrounds. I recognize the power that I have in this situation that you don't have. All of it is supposed to be the representation of our knowledge, but the avoidance of others to recognize it. Olive is the most intelligent character in this book by far. She knows the law. She knows what to say. She knows how to say it. Even in the part of the story where her brother is being accosted, she's the intelligent one. I'm going to record this the right way. I know I got to step back, but I know I don't have to step back that far. But every time her voice gets ignored, she feels that. And I wanted to display that for people because I thought that is a common occurrence for us. That we may know, but our voice isn't always being heard, and how she navigates through that, how she responded to that in the situation, but also how her mother and her talked about that as well. And how the mother struggled with answering that question, and she struggled with asking it, because I think that's part of this dialogue. And that's another reason why I wanted these children to be biracial, because if she was a Black woman, that would have been a very easy conversation. That would have been 2 pages, if that.
Right.
But I wanted that struggle between the two of them, and I would hope that it helped, especially parents who are not of color, who are now, I mean, the running joke, especially in Brooklyn, is 20 years from now, everyone's going to be brown.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Absolutely.
I wanted that conversation in there for everyone.
But the one thing that made me mad about that conversation, ooh, when her mother was like, "It's just a phone. You should have just given it up." I'm like, "No, ma'am. See, that's what you don't get because you're white. I shouldn't." And she even says, "Why should I have to do that? And why do I have to lessen myself? And who do I become if I keep doing this with every interaction that I have?" And I'm glad that you made Olive speak up about that, because I just was she was like, "It's just a phone. I would rather you come home safe." It's not just a phone.
Yeah.
It's a much bigger thing. It's the principle of the thing. I was telling her, mom was like, "Just shut up. Just shut up. Just sit your Pollyanna behind down somewhere, please." Just because she was making me so angry.
I have to stand up for all the mothers that I did speak with. That is something I constructed. I needed to construct that in order to have that conversation. All of the mothers that I spoke to, they understood. They would want her to give the phone up because the fear of what would happen, but they understand why she wouldn't. I had to create that friction to have her respond in that way, to create that dialogue. But yeah, that's one that got me too. That one. Yeah.
Because you understand that, yeah, in the overall arc of it, yes, it's just a phone and it can be replaced. But the dignity that's given up by giving that woman her phone, and if she had given that woman her phone and the woman just walked away with her phone, even though the cab guy came, maybe what if she had walked away with that phone before the cab guy showed up? So then Olive's phone is out there with some woman. And she's not going to come back and try and find that girl when she gets her real phone back, and she's not going to apologize.
Nope.
So it's just a phone, but it's not just a phone. And that's the hard choice, that she's having to make there. So it was a very good scene. It just shows the frustration of, do I just give in? Is this phone going to cost me my life? Or am I going to, stand up for myself? So I think that was probably one of my favorite scenes.
Thank you.
Even though it made me angry.
So my mother read like an early version of it. Like it wasn't polished. And she would call me the next morning at 5:30, just cussing the officer. I was like, "Mom," and this is before we had a child. Like my wife and I, we knew we were trying. Everyone knew we were trying. I was like, "Mom, your grandbabies aren't even here yet."
Mm-hmm.
Boy, if this cop come touch me, Pitney, Mom, it's like,
Mama gonna get a cutlass, and she gonna take care of him.
Pitney one time, and I come to America, I'm fixing this. I said, "Mom, it's just a book. It's just a book." So no, you are not alone in that.
But it's not just a book, because this is America, and these are the things that, I hope it never happens, but these are things that your children might go through, and I'm with your mom.
Yes.
If somebody touch my kids, they going down.
Yeah.
I don't care, cop, otherwise, they going down. I might go down too, but you going down with me.
But like you said, like the story, I didn't make this up. Like these stories, things that I've seen as a public defender. I was in New York for part of law school, as well as most of my undergrad during the stop and frisk. I've matched the description when I was 20 and been asked to step out of a subway. The Olive story I've heard multiple times from my clients. It's pretty much the Soho Karen story plus additions to other things. I didn't want to make a fanciful story where people would be like, "But this doesn't happen." No, turn on your TV. Ask someone who lived in New York or Chicago, L.A. This is not a far-fetched story. And so if we know these are realistic stories, what else do we do but use these stories to teach our children? And that was the intent.
So this book not only shows Olive and Reed in the situations at the moment, but the aftermath, physically, emotionally, mentally, of these dangerous altercations. And it really puts a finger on the fact that Black people really have PTSD from hearing about and or seeing or experiencing police violence against Black people. So let's talk about why it was important to show the toll that these interactions take on the ones who are lucky enough to survive.
the best example I can give, right? Like I said, my son is 6 months old, biracial family. He's got better clothes than I have. And some of the clothes are really cute, and he has hoodies. And I see my family, not like my wife's family, put the hoodie on, and he's cute. And he's only 6 months old. But growing up, I wasn't allowed to wear hoodies. Because when I put a hoodie on, it looked like I was the suspect number one. I know that's PTSD. I know it's foolish for me to see my wife put a very cute baby Gap hoodie on our 6-month-old son and take him outside and be like, look how adorable he is. For me, I can feel myself be like, one day I got to tell him he can't wear hoodies. One day I got to tell him we don't play that game because of what we look like when we have it on. Do I have to work through that on my own? Yes. Is he going to be able to wear hoodies when he's 14, 15, 16? I don't know. Right now I'm leaning towards no because of the perception of how people will look at him. And so I wanted people to see that it doesn't stop after the interaction. It's not, wow, this was bad. And okay, the next day I'm back at school and things are okay. Like that stuff stays with you. And it might even be passed on to our children. I mean, I definitely pass it on to my brother who's 12 years younger than I am. He's 22, turning 23 in June. And to this day, I still see a wallet in his back pocket. I'm like, yo, front pocket. Don't. And just, let's see if I can stand up and show people the reason why I say this. Back pocket, when I'm reaching for it, it looks like I'm going for a weapon, right? This can be confused. Is he going for his wallet or his weapon? So my brother was always taught, your wallet is here. Very few, if any, cops are going to be confused as to this being a weapon. And so that's why, and I actually got that from a peace officer in youth court who I interviewed as well. And he added some more on top of that. And that's why we don't play those games. We don't do hoodies. We don't do wallet in the back pocket. Another person told me they don't even do black, brown, and silver wallets because those are the colors of guns. They do bright pink and yellow and that kind of stuff. I'm like, what are the steps we're taking? Like, what kind of trauma did you have to go through something that now we're telling our kids we can't, those color wallets, they're not for us. And that's why I tried to convey that because it's real.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you were interviewing all these parents for the book, what's one thing that caught you completely by surprise?
We all think we're alone in this. I was shocked.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, because
wow.
So this is why I'm shocked, okay? I literally had a text group of black and brown male attorneys who were like first in their office, first in this, and they've gone through kind of that being treated differently in office. There's 16 of us in a group chat. If I need to know, like if I'm on ABC and there's a case in South Carolina, I did it yesterday. I say, hey guys, does anyone know an attorney in South Carolina? I don't know how they do jury selection there. Can you help me out? I got 5, 6 responses from 20 different attorneys in South Carolina like that. We're connected as a community, as attorneys and especially attorneys of color. So you're telling me that we don't have a community about, hey man, my kid just watched George Floyd die. Would you tell your kid? It surprised me that we thought we were so alone in this when so many of us are having this conversation. And that's one thing that I hope for the book as well, that we have that connective tissue. When you hear about the book, you pick up the book, you be like, yeah, I've had to have this conversation with my kids. Like, oh, you too? You too? You too? All right. What's the best advice we could put together? How do we do this? I'm feeling stressed about it. I don't know if my trauma is coming through and affecting my kid. Is yours? How do you deal with it? And I was so surprised that we didn't know that we had this community that we can lean on. And that's one of the major reasons why this book went from, I'll just tell my kids about it and they'll learn, to I think other people should hear about it too if they so choose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just so much to just process there. So talk to us about why you chose to put quotes at the beginning of each chapter and the birds there on the first page of each chapter.
So I have very little artistic ability. The birds I'm going to have to give to the publisher. And when I put it there, I was like, I love it. Because the idea of being safe and free, oftentimes we think of birds. Birds often don't have a difficulty of coming home safe. They just, and they're home, right? The chapters kind of go along the lines of the characters having different names as well. I try to connect the chapters and the quotes or the snippets of the quotes in a way to kind of guide the readers, like, this is what you're about to hear. And I also want people to read the chapter and then go back to the chapter title and be like, okay. I mean, one chapter is, was it? I always mix it up. Nothing that isn't faced cannot be changed. Right? I believe that's James.
Yeah. Nothing can be changed until it is faced. Yeah.
I always mix it up. But thank you. And that's what that chapter's about. We all want something to change. Keeping our kids safe, police brutality, equal justice, whatever it is. It's not going to get changed unless we face it. The unfortunate reality here is that I had to write that children are facing it, because that's the unfortunate reality of their lives. But that's what that chapter's about, and that's what I wanted to kind of guide people as they're reading.
Okay. All right. So you're a legal contributor for ABC. You've covered events like the death of Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd. You've represented indigent clients. You see up close and personal what the justice system does to Black and brown people. How do you keep from living your life in fear, not only as a Black man, but now as a new father?
So I guess it's two things. One, just statistically speaking, I've kind of aged out of what should be more or less fearful. It's really what I've seen is depending on how large the child is or how tall, 12 to kind of like 22, right? That's where officers are really looking towards crime. So I found that as I got older, I was being watched differently. I also navigate myself in a different way. I walk a certain way. I carry myself, wear certain clothes that even we talk about in the book. That's not always a safe bet. But it's like, how do I analogize? It's like saying, how did you get over a lost one? You don't. You just learn to cope. Like, there's always a piece of you that's still going to be worried. There's always, if I'm sitting on a train, for example, and I see an officer walk by, I stand up a little quicker and I'm like, all right, no probable cause. He can't think of a way to stop me, question if he does question me. Like, I start going through the Fourth Amendment in my head when I'm driving down the street and a cop pulls up behind me, even if they're just trying to go around. I think to myself, okay, I've got my license and registration in there. My cell phone is here. I'm going to put my hands in 10 and 2. If he does come to get me, I'm not going to shift. I'm playing the same thing that Oliver Reed does. I'm anticipating, if this is a problem, this is how I need to go about it. For me, that calms me. For me, that lets me know that I'm prepared and I'm ready if it does. 99% of the time, it never happens now that I'm, especially in my 30s. That's what I do. It's stressful. It's a lot, but it's the reality. It's the hand that I was dealt with.
Right. Yeah. So let's take a moment to share the one technique, the acronym. I didn't write the acronym down, but it's like breathe, assess. Let's just share that real quick for the parents out there as something that they can share with their kids when they're having an interaction with the cops. So,
to your point, this is difficult for anyone, adult, child, to kind of break down as they're in the moment. And what I found that was easy through law school, growing up, acronyms. And I think the acronym, this actually, again, not my idea. This came from one of the parents that I interviewed. And I always want to go back and give them the respect that they're due for that. I think it's bad. Breathe, assess, detail. I think there's another D as well. I'm sorry if I'm missing it right now.
I think there's 2 A's. It's breathe, assess, act, and details. There we go. Yeah.
So breathe. You're in a stressful situation. I find that if you're controlling your breathing and you're focusing on that helps to center you. Assess, see what's going on. Okay. You can't act unless you have a good picture of everything that's going on. What I find with a lot of my clients and a lot of people who interact with the police, it's, I got to go quick. I got to answer quick. I got to move quick. Whatever they say, I got to respond. I got to do this. And you don't know what missteps you may be doing. You don't know what actions maybe appear criminal or dangerous to the officer. So breathe and assess. I also want you to see what they're asking you. What exactly are they asking you? And then act. After breathing, calm yourself, assessing, and then act. Answer only the questions you're being asked of. Recognize when the questions go from just open-ended to accusatory. Understand what this person perceives you to be. Because I understand, so I've got I'm wearing jeans because no one's going to see my legs. I want to be comfortable. When I walk through the streets, in my mind, I think I'm Brian Buckmire. I'm a fun-loving, caring guy. I'm a defense attorney. I make dad jokes. I'm on TV. Like, I'm not a bad guy, right?
Right.
That's what I think I am. It's not necessarily what people see when they see me. And so in that breathe, assess, and act, it's understanding who you are, but understanding who that person may see you. And you may have to act not based on who you are, but who that person perceives you to be if we're talking about your safety. And then D was details, because when you do, and I'm not going to say if, because I want it to be when you do survive this interaction, what are the next steps? Are we going to report this officer? What is their name, their badge number, their height, their general description? What are the next steps afterwards? Right? And so I wanted to create an acronym and a way for people to see how these children got to the point of being able to analyze and articulate themselves in the way that they did. Because, again, spoke to a young gentleman who's actually the CEO of the charter school that I work at. And he said, this is great, Brian. Like, I love how they're working through all of this, but you need to tell the children or the readers how they got to this point, how they became these people to be able to stop, think, and be like, okay, I answer this way. Okay, officer, I'm going to narrate what I'm doing. And that's how we came up with that acronym.
A great one. A great one. What's one thing you'd like people to take away from this book?
Ooh. There are many things, but I think the one thing more important than anything would be we're all struggling. I think we're all struggling with this answer, and we are better in answering this question together than we are apart. I believe in people. I know you. Trust me. I see the worst of us. I'm always talking about someone getting murdered, raped, abandoned. I see the worst of us, but I still have hope that we are better together than we are apart. And I hope that people walk away from this, even though they're angry and they're like, Olive, I just wish Olive did this, and I hope that you walk away with more hope than you did before you picked up this book. I think that's what it is. I think hope. Maybe you gained a little piece of information. Maybe you realize that other people are having this conversation. Maybe you can connect with someone else to have this conversation and grow your own community where you can formulate answers. If there's anything that I think that I want people to take from this book, I think it's hope.
I still think Olive should have been able to beat that girl up. Just gonna say. Not trying to ruin the book. I'm just saying Olive should have thrown some hands.
I do not disagree.
It might not have been safe, but she should have thrown some hands.
Yeah.
So your book, Come Home Safe, comes out February 7th.
Yep. Just around the corner.
Please tell readers where they can buy your book.
So it's a HarperCollins subsidiary that's really selling, that's publishing this book. So you can get it everywhere. You can literally type in my name, Brian Buckmire. There's Good Book Read. There's Amazon. You can actually order it today, and they will ship it out to you when February 7th comes around. And so the easiest thing I say, just go to Amazon. We've got a hardcover. We've got a soft cover. There's going to be an audio book coming out. Got a young brother. I forgot his name. Way better voice than me. I was trying to go for like a young Idris. That was the thing I was going. Was like, if Idris was my older brother, and he was telling me some things, what would he sound like?
Uh-huh.
And so go to Amazon, go to Good Books Read, type in my name, it comes up, and get the book, read it, share it. I think you, like you said, you read it in one sitting.
I did.
So yeah.
Yeah, and where can we find you on social media?
So my social media is The Buck, like TheBuckESQ, like The Buck Esquire. You'll see me posting about the book. You'll see me talking about recent events with anything criminal.
Okay.
Focus a lot on police violence, unfortunately, murders, assaults, things of that nature. But you'll see a lot more about the book. I'm going to be doing more podcasts. Thank you for this. This is amazing.
Absolutely.
And more of this conversation. I hope that this book continues this conversation. Like I said, we learn from each other, create a community and a dialogue.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing your time and talents with us today. I appreciate you being here, and thank you for this book. Great conversation starter.
Thank you. And thank you for the platform and everything you're doing. And I looked into you and I'm like, this is amazing. Like, my voice is but a tiny, tiny squeak. And without platforms like you that create a community to kind of showcase these things, I'm just yelling in the dark. So thank you for that.
Oh, make me cry now. And Booze and Bros, you know how I do. At the end of every show, I give you with a quote, and today it comes from my favorite rapper, KRS-One, and he says, "This is the problem with the United States. There's no leadership. A leader would say police brutality is an oxymoron. There are no brutal police. The minute you become brutal, you're no longer police." So we're not dealing with police. We're dealing with a federally authorized gang. Until next time, y'all, you know what to do. Grab a book and read. And I'm out. Thank you for lending me your ear today. If you've enjoyed this independent podcast, you can help me continue to shine the light on Black authors and their stories by becoming a patron at patreon.com/betweenthereads, or by giving a one-time gift at www.ko-fi.com/betweenthereadspodcast. That's ko-fi.com/betweenthereadspodcast. Tune in next time for another great episode.